Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 292. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another co-hosted episode with the fabulous Joanna Hennon. This episode from today is kind of a follow-up to episode 290, which I did with Joe Casey, where we talked about spirit guides versus higher self. And again, if you didn't listen to that episode, this is based on an email that I received from a listener. She said, spirit guides versus inner self. This has been on my mind for a while and has come to the foreground while I've been taking Lisa Wechtenheiser's Woo Woo 101 course. I've been wondering, if you rely on spirit guides for guidance, is that not disempowering? Your inner self has all the answers, right? So is looking to spirit guides or things like pendulums not giving your power away? Is it trusting external factors rather than trusting your own inner guidance? Or are they all simply coming from the same place? I'd love to have more clarity on this since it feels a little woolly in my head. So, I had this same conversation with Joe Casey a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to do it with Joanna Hennon as well because I knew she would have a totally different perspective, and I think this is a really, really good, juicy question, and I thought it was worth exploring with a couple of different people. Now, I don't think I've done this before on the podcast. I don't think I've done the same topic with two different people, and so I'm really excited about this. I really look forward to hearing what you think about this, kind of taking the same topic and covering it with two different people. I think it provides a different perspective, and I really enjoyed both conversations, and I think both conversations are very useful. But again, I really, really liked this topic. So, what will you learn today? You will learn why nobody has the ultimate truth on this, even us. We ask the question, what is the higher self, and does it have limitations? Can you really get everything you need from your higher self? We ask, what are spirit guides? What is their role, and how can we work with them? We help you understand where is the best place to start for you, and how to find the best way of working, because it's going to be different for everyone. So we answer the question, should you start working with your spirit guides first or with your higher self? And Joanna's guides weighed in on this, and they had a very interesting answer. When we were kind of putting together the bullet points for the talking points that we were going to cover, they popped in and said that they wanted to be a part of this podcast. So they come in too. We also answer the question, is guidance from your spirit guides better than guidance from your higher self? Is there a kind of hierarchy to the different beings or entities? We answer why it's so important to view this relationship like any other and why you need to really cultivate the relationship as you would with a human being. We ask the question, do you have to choose between one or the other, higher self or spirit guides, or can you work with both? We cover what kinds of questions can you ask? And is there such a thing as a bad question or a wrong question? We also talk about how to get the wording right and how to ask the most powerful types of questions. Finally, we share how to actually get in touch with your higher self and with your spirit guides, how to make first contact by taking practical action, even if you're the kind of person who hates meditating or doing gratitude work or that kind of thing. So, I hope you find this episode interesting and useful. And I really look forward to hearing what you have to think about it. So as always, you can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. So without further ado, I will hand you over to the episode. Hey, Joanna. Good to see you.
It is. It's always great to have these conversations.
So today I think is going to be a really juicy conversation. We are talking about working with spirit guides versus working with your higher self. What's better, what you should do, how to approach it. So maybe we should get started by talking about what is the higher self.
Seems like a really big question. Like that should be a whole podcast episode on its own, you know? So I think we should start, or I feel like it's really important to start by saying that nobody has the truth and nobody has the ultimate truth. So what I will say here and what Holly will say here is coming from spirit, but it's also going through our own personal filters. Yeah. So this is not like a teaching moment. We're not like going to enlighten you with the truth about the universe. We're just giving you like we're sharing, I guess, our own way of looking at these concepts and working with these concepts and sharing these concepts. And then you can take what resonates, what feels true to you, and run with that. And if you have a different idea or a different way of looking at it, then that's also fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really important because we can't actually define the higher self.
This is the ultimate truth about the higher self, and that's it, period.
You know, it's so funny because I've always had a real problem with these like generalizations or like saying that anything is absolutely true. It's like, but how do you know? You know? And this is really one of those situations where I think we have to admit, I think not enough people admit that they don't have the truth because they can't.
And we're talking about really intangible things here and like really spiritual concepts. So it's like everyone's going to have their own different perspective on this stuff.
Yeah. And we're all tuning into like the same energy to get these answers. But ultimately, like, as I said, it's filtered through your own ego and your own experience and your own kind of symbolism and all these things. So we can all have kind of different definitions that are probably a version of the truth, and they can all be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we're all tapping into the same thing. So just I think that's really important to say before we answer the question, what is the higher self?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for giving us that framework.
So I think... Mm-hmm. This is the way that I look at the higher self. So there's a part of us that's still a part of us that is in the spirit realm. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the way I've seen this explained is that the soul is a hand and then the fingers are the personalities.
Oh.
Right? So there's a central like bit.
A thingy.
From which the personalities stem, right? Mm-hmm. So you are one of those fingers. Is the answer to what is the higher self. It's that thing that kind of holds it all together, right? So it's the part of you that's connected to spirit.
Okay.
So I talk about 3 levels. That's how it was explained to me when I first learned about spirituality and all these things. It's the ego, which is the bit of us that's here in the physical space, not like the negative bit of the ego, just like the part that's physically here. The soul, which is our higher self. And then there's spirit, which is, I guess, the universe or God or like whatever you want to call that. I just call it spirit, which is the bigger entity that the soul is part of, right? So the soul is the middle one. That's the way I look at it. How about you, Holly?
Yeah, so I think you kind of have more information on this than I do. I mean, I haven't ever really analyzed what the higher self is. I would say it's the soul. I would say it's what in Psyche is called the superconscious. Yeah, it is that part of us that has kind of a higher perspective, I guess because it is connected to spirit.
Yeah, so I think like what's really important about this is that there's a connection to spirit. So it's not like you're a soul and you're born into this lifetime and you come here and you're completely disconnected, right? There's a part of you that's still out there somewhere. So there's a part of you. For me, this is the bit that's really important. And like, if you've listened to our conversations, you'll know that for me, it's always important to have something actionable and real and tangible and practical because I mean, otherwise it's just this is interesting and, let's get back to real life kind of thing, which is kind of pointless. So what's important is that there's a link, right? So there's a part of you that does have that higher perspective, that wider perspective. There's a part of you that does remember. how all this actually works. There's a part of you that does know why you came into this particular lifetime at this particular time. And I think that's the interesting bit about the higher self. So you can think about it in any way you want, but the important thing is that there's a part of you that has a bigger overview, that knows the purpose, that knows where you came from, where you're going, your place in the world.
Right, because the higher self or the soul is the part of you that, assuming you believe in reincarnation, comes back to have different lifetimes in this realm, on this planet.
Well, so that could be a different podcast episode. I mean, when we talk about like the hand, I mean, if you could see the video, it's my hand, like I'm putting my hand kind of horizontal in front of me and the fingers are pointing down. So the soul is the palm of the hand and the fingers are the personalities. Reincarnation, yes, but I'm not entirely convinced that they happen one after the other.
Ooh,
so the impression I get is that they all happen at the same time. So all those fingers are happening at the same, because there is no time, right? Time isn't linear. So that's a totally different conversation, but maybe I should have kept my mouth shut.
Now people are going to be like, what? It's all happening at once.
I know. I think it's so, and it's so funny that you said, you haven't analyzed what the soul is. Like, I analyze this stuff all the time. I'm like, how can past lives be past and future if there's no time? Now I get it, So this is what it's like to be inside my brain. Right.
Okay, so before we move on though, so assuming that, time is not linear and everything's happening at once, so we could say then that our past lives, and I'm putting air quotes on that, and our present life and our future lives are all happening simultaneously in different dimensions, realms, planes of consciousness?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it's all, so when you're talking about like past life healing or something, like we know that when we heal a part of us in one lifetime, it heals across the lifetimes. We know that. Right. If we work with these concepts, we know that. And Holly, you and I have done some of this stuff together where it was very clear, the link between the past life and the present life. I mean, it's fine. Like, it serves us to think of them as past and present and future for the moment. It's just to know, really, the most important thing to remember is that there's a bit that kind of has the wider perspective.
Right. And
that you can, like, you're still connected to that.
Right.
So you're not like cut off, right? You're not on your own.
Right. Okay. So that leads me to ask, if that higher self, that part of us, is connected to spirit, can't you just get everything you need from your higher self? Like, why would you want to go outside yourself and go to spirit guides or something else?
Yes, this is a really, really interesting thing, right? Because you'd think that you could get everything from your higher self. And it makes sense that you should be able to get everything from your higher self. However, the way that I understand it, the way like my guides have explained it to me, and the way that I've read about in the research I've done, the books I've read, is that there's a certain system of souls as well, right? So we have systems here on Earth, and there's also systems up there, I'm going to say, for lack of a better word, right? So the soul, like not every soul is a spirit guide. I don't want to use the word hierarchy either. I don't think we actually have the language to really talk about these concepts in a good way, because hierarchy implies that something is better or more advanced, as in like more valuable or whatever.
Right. They have different roles.
Yeah. So, but it is an advancement. Like, so but it's just that it's not kind of judged as better or worse.
Right. Right. Like everyone's got their place.
Yeah. So so a spirit guide will be a soul that either has experienced more or has had more lifetimes or has somehow gained more knowledge or something, like
has a broader perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
So than just a soul.
And just like one of us.
Just like one of us. Although, one of us, we don't know. Like, we could, in theory, be here and at the same time a spirit guide to someone else, right? Because the soul,
right,
it can divide. It doesn't, like, it can have kind of lots of fingers and lots of different pots.
Right. And it can transcend time, space, and...
Yeah. So, again, a whole other conversation.
Exactly.
So you can't get everything you need from your higher self, or a better way of looking at it perhaps is that working with spirit guides is still valuable. Like they can still bring something to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you would hire a coach or a mentor in your physical reality.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can do everything by yourself. You can. But somebody else will have a different perspective and a wider, a coach with more experience will also bring a different perspective to the table. And so a spirit guide with more experience will also bring a different perspective to the table. And on top of that, like the spirit guide really knows your whole path, right? Really understands kind of where you came from and where you're going and kind of has that context.
Right.
Whereas the higher self must have some of that as well, of course. But I get the impression that the spirit guide still has a wider perspective. I hope this is making sense.
Yeah, I think so. So when would you want to work with the higher self and when would you want to work with spirit guides? How does that work?
Well, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, didn't it? And my spirit guides actually chimed in to explain some of this stuff to us. And so what they said is that the working with the higher self, with your soul, is a matter of being really present in the now space and being kind of like the same as the conversation about soul purpose, life purpose. Like people think it's a thing, that they need to achieve or build or create, whereas soul purpose, all it is like learning to be yourself. And being okay with that,
Yeah.
So you want to be like a super accomplished author. That's fine, as long as that's your dream.
Yeah.
And then, then it's aligned with your higher self. So it's being present with who you are, and what's right for you and enjoying the human experience and being here in the moment. That's the higher self work. And then working with spirit guides gives you a bigger, like a view on the bigger picture.
Right.
Like my example, which is the one that they kind of, I guess they endorsed that way of thinking, like with what they said. For me, I would ask my spirit guides about like the next steps to moving the family to Ireland, right? So that's one of my big dreams.
Yeah.
And so doing that in a way that works for all of us, that is a smooth and pleasant and joyful experience, and where we have enough money when we get there and a nice house and all this stuff, right? That's like the big picture.
Right.
And that's really difficult to grasp as possible.
Right.
Right? And so they can help you with that. They can help you kind of nudge you in the right directions. The soul will nudge you towards the things that are right for you in the higher self. And the spirit guides will nudge you also, it's hard to explain, also towards things that are right for you, but also focusing on a kind of a bigger picture.
Yeah. Kind of like the overarching life stuff rather than the nitty gritty. Right. So I think it's interesting what you said. And I think it was really interesting that they did this when we were kind of putting together the bullet points for this episode, that they chimed in and said, hey, we want to be a part of this podcast. We have something to say. So are the spirit guides just always kind of chilling in the background and we can tap into them whenever we want, or they pop in whenever they want, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think they are always there in the background. I really, really do. Like there was a time when I was working with my spirit guide, all the time. And they were just always there. I mean, I think it's like difficult for us to imagine that because we're stuck on these concepts of time and stuff. And you're kind of like, I've heard people say things like, doesn't my spirit guide can have like other things to do than like be at my beck and call?
They have to like change the sheets or clean the bathroom
or like guide someone else or like go have a meeting with the other spirit guides.
You've got a conference call.
Exactly. But it doesn't work that way, right? They don't have this limitation of time and space. So yeah, I do think that they're kind of just there, available in the background.
And it's our responsibility to tap in and make contact.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that we're guided anyway. Like some people don't say that they work with spirit guides, but they like see signs in the universe, and like, what do you think that is? That's also going to be some manifestation of guidance, right?
Yeah.
So I think they do like try to guide us.
Yeah.
In
whatever way we're receptive to. Because obviously some people are open to this stuff and some people are totally not.
Yeah, exactly. So in whatever way we're receptive. You said the word responsibility. It certainly is our responsibility to follow the guidance, right? So they can't actually do that for us.
Yeah, we have to take the action.
We have to take the action. And so we're constantly being guided. And we know this, even people who don't consider themselves spiritual or whatever, like they might have an idea that won't go away. right? So they are being guided towards something, but then if they choose to ignore that idea because they don't think they're ready or they're not good enough or whatever, then nothing's going to happen. Like, spirit guides can't do more than that. They can't actually, like, they won't, like, stand in front of you in, like, human form and be like, do this or else, you know?
Right. And they can be really vague in what they say and kind of cryptic. So their messages aren't always super clear.
I think like that's something like one can work on. Like that's certainly been my experience. Like I'm not really interested in this sounds really funny, but I'm not really interested in messages of like trust and love, you know? Like that doesn't interest me at all. I used to find it so frustrating. And people would think it's really amusing or like not even amusing. Like people would find it shocking that I would say to my spirit guides, like, that's not good enough. Like, I don't accept that. Like, give me more. Like, give me something I can actually use.
Yeah.
So I do think, like, any relationship, you need to set expectations and kind of guide the relationship so that you feel good in the relationship. What's the use of having a spirit guide who just talks about love and trust all the time and you still don't know what to do?
Yeah.
That's not good for them or for you, right? Because their job is to actually guide you. And if you can't be guided through messages that are vague, then nobody's happy.
Yeah.
So like any relationship, you should like say what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And there will be pushback, right? They will, like if they don't want to give it to you, they won't. Like it's not like you control them.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that you're using the word relationship because it's not like they're this authority or we're the authority that we can tell them what to do. There's like a give and take there. And the more you work with them, the better you know them, the better you get guidance.
Yeah, it is. It's a relationship. And you said it's not like we control them. And the opposite is true as well. They don't control us. So it's not like some all-knowing thing that you can be like, I think our example was, should I marry Mike or not?
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you that. Like, because it's still, we bring it back to the higher self. Your sole purpose is to learn to be you and learn to trust your own intuition and your own nudges, right? Yeah. So they can't tell you that. That would be like against the whole system, right?
Yeah.
They can guide you to ways of like, so that your intuition is stronger, or they can guide you to something that will help you make that decision, but they can't actually tell you.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting that you say that because years ago, I would say maybe, 12 or 15 years ago, when I was kind of in a dark period of my life and really unhappy and not knowing what actions to take because I was so out of touch with myself, I worked with the pendulum a lot. And so I would ask the pendulum, should I do this? Should I do that? Like totally the wrong questions to be asking the pendulum. And when I asked it the kind of question that you shouldn't be asking it, it would not give me an answer. Like I get very clear yes and no answers on my pendulum. It's not wishy-washy. It is very clear. Unless I ask it a shitty question, in which case it would just kind of go all over the place and like do a bunch of stuff. And I would just be like, okay. How do I rephrase this? Or what do I do? Like it would not give me a clear response because I wasn't asking the right questions.
Yeah, that's it. We want to be asking powerful questions, right? Questions like the way I explain this, because powerful questions is something that I teach as part of like guiding you back to your own intuition, right? So that you do ask the right questions because, we all start there, right? So yours was the pendulum, mine was the cards, or when I was younger, when I was in college, it was the Ouija board.
Oh, really? I've never used one of those.
There was a time where like I would ask the Ouija board everything. It's not like one of my finest moments. I was playing with some stuff that really I didn't understand, and it wasn't good.
Yeah,
it really was not good. But I was like addicted to it, like addicted to that process of like asking a question and immediately getting an answer.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what we all want. We all want clarity. We all want like clear direction. Like we all want to know if we do this and this, then this is going to be our result.
Yeah.
It's addictive, so now I teach powerful questions as part of that so that we don't do that, so that we can go beyond that. And one of the things that I always say is to look at the assumption underlying your question. Right. And you want to make sure that the assumption underlying the question is powerful, is I am powerful. I know how to do this. Like, this is meant for me. So you're not asking questions like, should I even, like, is this the right thing for me? Or like, am I good enough to run this business?
Yeah. Coming from a place of lack and fear.
Right. Because those assumptions really matter. in the answers you get as well. So like the more powerful the question, the more powerful the answer can be, and the better it can guide you to the things that you want to experience.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think a lot of people come to this stuff when they're not in a good place, not in a place of empowerment. And so they might not have a good first experience or first few experiences because they're in a shitty place. They're not coming from the right place and they're asking for guidance, and it just all goes wonky.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, totally true. And I think most people will come to this stuff from that place because, again, we're all human and we all all this good stuff. And we think, when we find out, oh, there's something that can tell me what to do, like, yeah, I'll have some of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like totally normal. And then you start getting messages that are vague or they don't want to answer your questions or whatever. Like you get silence and you start kind of moving through that process of learning to work with what you do get and learning to ask better questions and really, being present in that relationship and making demands as well. I think that's part of it. Just like in any relationship, like you need to say what you want, right? Yeah. And you let that develop then.
Yeah. So how do you get in touch with these things? How do you get in touch with your higher self? How do you get in touch with your spirit guides? Like, how would you explain kind of first contact for people who have not yet made first contact?
I think it's easier than you'd think. Like being with your higher self, let's just start with that.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to grasp. Like being with your higher self is just being with you. Like your higher self.
You're already there.
So all you need to do is be fully present with yourself, right? This is why like meditative practices or like being in the moment, doing what you love, right? I'm not a meditator. So I learned to use and I continue to use and I continue to teach intuitive art as the best way of being with yourself. Like there's something about that creative process that mirrors the process of like creating in the world. And it allows you to kind of quiet the mind and just be with yourself in that space. With what is, without judgment, without expectation. So there's something about intuitive art that really like facilitates that really nicely, I think. And if you want to get started with that and you don't know what I'm talking about, then just get a coloring book.
Yeah.
Right? And color mindfully. You could even like write a question at the top of the coloring page, right? Like,
set an intention.
What is my next step or whatever? Like I want to feel good or I feel, set an intention or ask a question and then color and just be in the moment and just see what comes.
Yeah, because what that does, obviously, is it takes your conscious mind and it focuses it on something that's easy to focus on. It's not running through all of the crap that's in your mind. I have to go buy milk. I have to do this. I have to do that. I forgot to do this. It's focusing it on something that's very simple.
Yeah, but that's exactly it, right? That's exactly it. Because you can't hear intuitive guidance. You can't hear your higher self. Like the higher self is like in a different dimension, right? Still, you need to like quiet down the mind crap.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's just too much noise. And and it's not like you won't be able to hear it, but you won't be able to distinguish it from all the other voices. That's it.
Yeah. Well,
so
also,
to distinguish it, need quiet.
Yeah. Also, I find that like we're so used to hearing our inner voices, like our mind chatter, that it's like the volume is high on that stuff, and the higher self or the intuitive guidance kind of whispers at the start because you're not used to hearing that voice. So, and you kind of need to quiet the loud stuff and then turn up the volume on the intuitive stuff. But that's a process of doing it, exercising that muscle.
Totally. It's just a muscle. And this feels like a good time to say that like the voices that are probably really loud in your head, especially if you're starting out with this connection stuff, they're going to be negative voices, right? They're going to be saying like, you're not enough, you're not good enough, nobody loves you, you're all alone, etc., etc. The higher self will never say that.
Yeah.
So if you're not sure how to distinguish, like when we say you already hear the voice of your higher self, but you're not distinguishing it, this is how to distinguish. Like all the negative stuff, all the stuff that makes you feel bad, all the stuff that keeps you from going for what you really want, that's illusion, right? The only voice that's true is the voice of the higher self, and that will always be supportive. That will always be a voice that feels comforting and good.
Yeah, your higher self is never going to be like, you're such an idiot, you failed that test, you're going to have to take it again, like what the hell is wrong with you? It's not going to say that.
By the way, neither will the spirit guides, right? The spirit guides will never say that either, although the spirit guides will challenge you.
Yeah, they can give you a kick in the butt.
Yeah, exactly, because like the higher self is you, right? So you're not going to give yourself a kick in the butt, let's say.
Right.
Usually, right? I mean, sometimes you will, but you'll just be you.
Yeah.
Whereas the spirit, you'll say that the spirit guides, oh, I wanted this. And this has happened to me, the true story, right? It's like, I wanted this and you didn't deliver.
Right.
And they'll be like, but you didn't choose it. That's it, like it's still, you didn't choose it. Like you still need to make those choices, those active choices and take the action and really like step up, not just say you're stepping up. So the spirit guides will challenge you on stuff like that, where you're going to be like, hey, you guys, all your fault. And they'll be like, no, still you. Still you.
Exactly. Like the joke about the guy that's like in the flood and he's calling on God for help and, God sends a boat, God sends, and the guy's like, God, I'm drowning. Like, you didn't come and help me. And he's like, dude, I sent you the boat. I sent you this. I sent you that. I sent you a raft. Like, I can't like pluck you up off the top of the building and put you on the boat. You got to take some action.
Yeah, and that's I love that joke, by the way. Like I've always loved that, and it's only recently that I've realized, like, even as why even as a child that really appealed to me, because it's just so true, right?
Yeah.
And the important thing about that kind of image of the guy in the boat, the drowning guy in the boat, is that you have to like take the opportunities that are around you. Because I think like this is veering off course a little bit from spirit guides inner self, but in terms of guidance, right? In terms of opportunities that are sent your way, you say you want something and then you have a bunch of choices and then you reject them because they're not good enough, because it's not exactly what you wanted, because this, because that. And then so you're not moving any further, right? And this happened to me when I first started. I said for years, like I was a practicing pagan, I was doing all sorts of stuff. And I kept saying like, I really want to do some more like spiritual development. I want to do a course. I want to really get into this, but I live in a country that's not English speaking, so I can't. So I actually I was looking for stuff in London, and like I planned to move to London, and then I met my husband, my now husband, so I didn't move to London. But in the meantime, I just kept up making all these stories about why I can't do this thing. And there was an opportunity for me, but it was in a language I didn't speak. And I remember saying, I can't do this because it's in Dutch. And they were like, but then you're not going to do it at all. Like, this is what you have, right? You have to do the best you can with what you have. This is what's available to you right now.
So what did you do, considering that you didn't speak the language and you wanted to take this course?
I took the course.
And how did you understand things?
It was an exercise in learning to listen with the heart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I practiced not focusing on the individual words, but on like trying to get the messages.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it worked pretty well. It was intuitive art as well. So, I mean, a lot of it was my own personal development. Some of it was translated to me. I did it with a friend who spoke both Dutch and English. So some of it was translated when I couldn't get it. So there was plenty of support. And I'm like, that started my whole path on the spiritual journey, on the business journey, on everything.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't had the courage to say, okay, what I want, like in an ideal world, isn't showing up for me, it doesn't mean that it's not the right thing for me. It doesn't mean that the spirit guides aren't helping me. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means this is my path for now, right?
Yeah. And sometimes the thing that our spirit guides give us is not all wrapped up in a nice, neat package. Sometimes you have to go even though you don't speak the language. Yeah. And it's not ideal, but it's the right thing.
That's it. It's not ideal. So like the spirit guides, they won't necessarily always give you what you want in the ideal packaging. And you have to have the courage to just go with it, to recognize the opportunities, to like do the best you can with what you have, instead of like getting stuck in these stories of why you can't have, or the spirit guides aren't delivering.
Yeah. They're just maybe not delivering what you want, how you want, when you want, where you want.
Right. And that's also a learning experience, right? To like not be attached to what the thing looks like.
Yeah.
But just go with the flow of what's available at the moment. Like that doesn't mean that we can't ask for more, right? There's all these things can kind of be in existence in our lives at the same time. But yeah, just a little aside on how sometimes when things show up, they're not what you expected.
Yeah. Or they don't look like what you were thinking you were going to get. So do we have to choose between one or the other, or can we work with the higher self and the spirit guide? How do we balance this?
I mean, I think we need to be working with both. We talked about this a little bit before we started recording, and I said something that my guides later corrected me on. So I said that like we should start, or it's normal for us to start by working with spirit guides because we have this tendency to ask questions of an external source and all this stuff. But in fact, my guides corrected me and said that's not true. So although we can have both, it seems that, and it makes sense now that I hear it, it seems to our advantage to work with the higher self first so that we're strong and confident in ourselves, right? So that we trust our own path, that we like ourselves, so that we get used to like enjoying our time here and not keep striving for more.
Right. And so we come from a place of empowerment. So when we speak with the spirit guides, we're asking the right questions, not the, oh, what should I do? I don't know what to do. Help me.
Exactly. So then they can kind of fulfill their purpose in this relationship as well, right? Because let's not forget, like, they're not there just for us. Like, they also have a purpose to fulfill, or a contract or something. Like, maybe in another lifetime you were their spirit guide, or like my first spirit guide, I know that we had a lifetime together.
Ooh.
So the relationships are deeper than just human and spirit guide.
Right. They're relationships that, might have spanned, as you said, different lifetimes, which, of course, as we know now, are all happening simultaneously.
Let's not think about that because our heads might explode. Let's just think of time as linear. It just makes things a lot easier.
Okay, so what kinds of questions can you or should you ask? So we've talked a lot about, asking the right questions, asking the wrong questions. So, like, specifically, can we give some examples to people about what kinds of questions are good questions to ask? Or might be useful questions to ask?
I don't know. I think like you need to just start with whatever you want to know, I suppose. I mean, you have to, like, I can't give you questions. Powerful questions start with words like how and why and what. Like, what is my next best step to support my goal? Like, not like, why isn't this working out for me? That's not a good question. So you want them to be positive.
How do I get what I want?
Yeah. Well, how do I get what I want? Let's see.
What actions do I need to take to experience X, Y, Z?
Yeah. So how do I get what I want can be a good question, because you're assuming that you can get what you want. And you just need to, there's a how that's missing.
Right.
So that's a good question to ask. For the higher self, I'm just trying to think, like, the reason this is coming out so slowly is I'm trying to think like how I do it. So with the higher self, I think like when I was working with my higher self at the start, it was more on themes. Also like success, because it's like working with the higher self is like getting to know yourself.
Yeah. I mean, on multi levels.
Yeah, that's really what it is, right? That's like accepting that, this is what success looks like for you.
Yeah. So like a lot of journaling stuff and like answering journal prompts and that kind of stuff, I think helps me personally really connect. I love that stuff.
Yeah, journaling. I'm still a big fan of intuitive art. I think like it just takes that thinking piece out of the equation. And like I was never a creative person. Like I was always told that I sucked at art when I was at school. Really? Yeah, so I didn't want to do it. That was another reason why I didn't want to do this course in Dutch. And
can't speak the language, can't draw. How are you going to do this?
I know. Like thinking back, I'm like, man, I was brave. But it really, like, because it's creative, like it's not an art class, right? Yeah. It's just a tool, a communication tool.
Yeah.
And it just really helps you like take that thinking piece out. Like I find now I'm better at journaling. When I was first starting out, I found like when I journaled, I just got like stuck in these loops of overthinking. It wasn't actually that helpful to me. Now I can do it more helpful way, more supportive way.
Yeah.
So it kind of just depends how you work, right? You need to find the right tool for you.
And I think it can be useful also kind of when you're in a good space. I think journaling is useful. Like I years ago did this business mentoring program with someone, and she really encouraged us to do morning pages every day for the duration of this 9-month program. So I was like, okay, she said this is important, so I'm going to do it. And so I did it every day for 9 months, and I hated it because I wasn't in a good spot at the time. And so my 3 pages of A4 size shit was shit. It was so awful. It was like all the dark crap was coming up to the surface, and I was writing it, but it was like every day the same thing. There was no resolution. It wasn't like there was no moving on from that. It was just like dredging up the crap and just letting it sit there.
It's actually like what they say now about talk therapies.
Yeah.
That they're not as useful as we once thought, because a lot of people they're useful for some people. Like if you're listening to this and you've had success, then awesome for you. But like for a lot of people, it doesn't work because it is, like you said, Holly, like just dredging up the crap.
And then not doing anything with it.
So you have to really see like what works for you. That's that's the main thing.
And different things might work for you at different times of life.
Correct.
So just because you have a practice that you love, if next year you start hating it, that doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It just means maybe it's time to try something different.
Yeah, totally. I'm a big believer of that. Like, remember that any of these practices, like they're meant to help you. Like if it's not helping you, if it's not feeling right, if it's not like putting you in the right kind of high vibration space, confident space to be like going out into the world and doing what you want and feeling good about it, then it's not working. It's not the right thing for you. So
and that's what those damn morning pages were for me. I hated every single minute of it.
Yeah, I don't like morning pages either, by the way. So so that's the higher self. That's just like spending time with you.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people like say that they feel connected with their higher self when they do things like music or art or like something
creative painting for me.
Painting.
Yeah.
Something that really fulfills them. Like and puts them into that
flow.
Even running.
Yeah.
Some people really love
yes.
And so just being with yourself. That's the higher self link. And how to work with spirit guides. Even though I'm not a meditator, even I will admit that it has its uses. And when I started working with spirit guides, like I would close my eyes and do a little like visualization or something to meet with them. And that's how I used to teach this stuff. And that's how I would get other people to meet theirs. And I've yet to meet anybody who like for whom the spirit guide doesn't show up. Like it always works. So just set that intention. Yeah. Close your eyes and maybe imagine yourself like in a safe space of some kind.
And like, relax.
Some people use bubble. Like then you invite the spirit guide into that bubble. I just like my safe space is like I walk through these woods and then there's this like clearing with a beach, like it's a small beach. So that's nice. Yeah. You can use intuitive art as well. Like you can use lots of things. That's, you can find your own way. But I think the intent is most important. Like if you intend to connect with your spirit guide, then they'll show up. And then like any relationship, right? You get to like feel what that feels like. You end up like, it'll feel different talking to your spirit guide than like talking to yourself. And you can't do that. Like you won't be able to recognize that unless you do it a lot, right?
Yeah. Now, one thing I really struggled with in the beginning when I first started connecting with guides, it was like, am I making this up? Is this for real? Or is it just like I'm daydreaming and this is my fantasy?
Me too. I had a real, like, I started channeling for clients very quickly. And it used to just terrify me. I was like, what if I'm just making this up?
For me, the sign that I wasn't making it up was that they use different language. They speak differently from how I speak, or they write differently from what my style is. So it felt like a different person. And like when I'm working on the tree book that I'm doing now, and I've channeled a bunch of trees for this book, like I could feel emotion that wasn't mine. Like in my body, I could feel something different.
Yeah, I mean, everybody will feel it differently. I think, like, to be honest, for me, what really helped is being really honest with myself about, like, the fact that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it's coming from this spirit guide or spirit or God or, I don't know, the plant next door or my higher self, or it doesn't matter. Like, it was clearly coming from somewhere. Like, I wasn't, like, making up a story. Like it was clearly kind of flowing. Right. And it doesn't matter. Like this is my whole thing about spiritual connection and soul connection and all this stuff. Like it doesn't really matter what the truth is, right? All that matters is that you're getting information that helps you live a better, happier life. That's all that matters. Yeah. I had this conversation with someone many years ago and she was like, but how can you prove it? You can't. Like, I don't need to prove it. Yeah. Like I'm not hurting anybody. In fact, I'm helping people. Yeah. I'm helping I was just helping myself, but like I was helping myself I felt better in my life than I saw that I could do the same for others. And for me, that's all that matters. We're all going to die and probably find out that it works a lot differently to how we imagined. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as long as we are contributing to ourselves and the world and helping lift ourselves and lift other people up and make this place a better place, then I think it's good.
And even that can be too much pressure. Like, because I think we could get stuck in like making the world a better place. Really, all we need to do is make sure that we're like in ourselves.
But I think that is making the world a better place. Yes. Like if everyone were like aligned with themselves and like that would be amazing. But
that's most people aren't. That's the goal of my work in the world.
And that would be a massive, massive shift.
I agree. And that's my goal, right? But if we take kind of making the world a better place as a goal, then we're still taking an external goal, right? It's still external to us. So I really think that everything benefits, as you say, from us kind of coming back to ourselves and being in alignment with our higher self and then letting our guides support us. And maybe this is something to mention. I think we're going to wrap up soon, but something to mention that, because I was saying to Holly right before we started recording that like I don't really work with my guides so much anymore. That's when they chimed in, didn't they? They were like, that's a mistake.
They're like, shouldn't be doing that. You need to come back.
So and the reason for that is like working with your spirit guides is allowing in support.
Yeah.
So there's that element of like, yes, you're powerful and yes, you are a soul, but that doesn't mean that you're separate from everything else. You're still part of like a bigger system and can tap into even more wisdom and guidance. So letting your spirit guide support you is actually a really kind of important part of the process, and it'll help everything. So just a little note.
And that can be hard for people because a lot of people feel like they have to do it all on their own in physical reality, much less spiritual reality. So it's like, I can't ask for help. I need to like take care of the kids and take them to school and clean the house and do this and have a full-time job. And so many people feel like they have to do everything on their own. So it's natural to also feel like you have to do everything on your own in terms of like guidance.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And that's what they said, right? They said like, that's not the most helpful, let's say, way of looking at it. Because we're all walking around as these individuals who want to feel all powerful and all tuned in and tapped in and whatever. But we're keeping ourselves like each of us separate kind of. Right.
Yeah, and also they'd said, I think it was them that said that thinking that we're all powerful as like a self-contained thing lacks the humility of someone who realizes they're part of something much bigger.
Yeah, they did say that. And I thought that was really interesting because like in a way, like working with your higher self and all that, like one of the goals is to feel powerful. Like I want the people that I help to feel powerful in themselves. But there's also that element of feeling like, okay. So it's really like it's powerful, but powerful doesn't mean all on your own. And it doesn't mean like it's not in the same sense as we have here on earth. So there's an element of being vulnerable enough to accept that you need support or like that support is just a normal part of your life. And like my guys are saying at the moment that like we used to have this on earth, right? So we used to be more in communities.
Yeah.
And like that support, it wasn't like you weren't weak or whatever. Like it wasn't a thing to ask for support. Like it wasn't even a consideration because the support was just there.
Right.
It was a normal part of existence.
Right. Everyone helps everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't something you had to ask for or consider. Like, am I the kind of person who could ask for help? Like we didn't used to consider these things.
Yeah.
That's the shift that needs to happen again. And when you work with your guides, you're allowing a level of support that's just helpful on so many different levels.
Yeah. So, good.
I hope that made sense. I keep saying that. I know, but I feel like I just like open my mouth and all this stuff comes out. I don't know if it's coherent or not.
I think it is. And I think that was a really good exploration of the topic and how we can make it practical. So to bring it down to even more practical levels. So someone who's listening to this has never made first contact, I keep calling it, because this is Star Trek. So what would you recommend for someone who's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm going to do it. Where do I start? Because I know we've talked about like journaling and the art stuff. Like, what is one practical thing that someone could do?
Well, you know what? The one that's coming to me, so I'm just going to say it.
Yep.
Is come work with me. I run an awesome group called the Soul Space. It's affordable. It's vibrant. It's super. It's a consistent thing. Working with your higher self and your spiritual connection and all these things, it's a consistency thing. Yeah. It's not you pulling a card once a month or pulling 12 cards, one for each month at the start of the year, and then like doing nothing else with that connection for the rest of the year. It's a consistent daily thing to align with who you are. And doing that as part of a group is awesome. If that's not your thing, where do you start? Make a commitment. So how I started is I actually started with oracle cards and I made sure to pull one every day.
Ooh.
And first I would pull one in the morning and just be like, what's my message for today? And then in the evening, I'd kind of see how that panned out.
Yeah.
So like the way, if what I noticed about the card or what I assumed the card meant in the morning was the way that it showed up for me after I'd gone through the day. So that's how I started. And this is something, actually, I haven't told you this yet, Holly, but I am going to run something. I used to run a program that was based on that. And I'm going to run it again. It's called Jumpstart Your Intuition. So that's I don't know when, but sometime soon, because it was just a really fun way to jumpstart your intuition and get into that habit. And also start to notice your own personal symbolism for your higher self and your guides or whatever. Like, how do you receive messages? Like when you see the color red, what does that mean? Like when you see the butterfly, what does that mean? You have to kind of develop your own dictionary almost of symbolism. So,
and it's about heightening your awareness of these things.
Yeah. So paying attention. That's it.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
How about you? Anything you want to add about like starting? Because you also, I mean,
it's about finding what works for you. So for me, it's journaling, answering journal prompts, journaling on my own. But one thing that I've done is trying to kind of keep it to a minimum. So not doing that morning pages stuff where you just dump on the page. And if I feel like things are getting too dark, or if I'm going through kind of a shitty week, I will turn it around by using gratitude. And this is something that I forget about all the time. Like, I'm not one of those people that does like a gratitude list every day. Like, I'll do it and then I forget about it for a few months, and then something reminds me and I come back. But that is, to me, the number one thing that kind of turns my perspective around and gets me out of the crap and into a better place mentally.
What a great illustration of like how different things work for different people, though. Like, I hate gratitude stuff.
And
like,
a lot of people do.
And this is the thing, like, you need to follow what feels good to you. It doesn't mean that I'm not grateful. Like, I'm super grateful. But like that whole gratitude practice thing doesn't work for me, because I end up with the same answers every time. Like my husband, my son, my house, it doesn't make me feel any better. So something that does make me feel good, and what I use often, is appreciation. And I got that from Abraham Hicks. So just like making sure that you notice. So either like notice all the good things in your day. So sometimes like if I'm in a bad place, I'll keep a list of like, this person smiled at me on the tram, or like this person bought me a cup of coffee, or like whatever those good things are, because I think we tend to forget.
Yes.
So that's kind of my version of gratitude. Or if I'm annoyed with a specific thing, then I make myself write out a list of everything I appreciate about that.
Yes, yes.
So this, for example, works really well for anybody who's in a job and they want to have a business, right? You don't want to be hating on your job. So one of the first things that you should be doing regularly is writing out a list of things that you appreciate about your job beyond the money.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of like gratitude work, though.
It is. It's a reframe. Like,
it's the word that works for you.
Yeah, it's just a slightly different perspective. And this is why we can't discount things that come our way, and we have to find our own way of doing them, right? Because you can't just say, like, I don't do gratitude stuff at all. It's just I do it my own way.
Exactly.
That's what we encourage everybody to do, right?
Yes, always. Find the thing that works for you and do it until it doesn't work anymore, and then find something else.
That's right.
All right, so I think we have covered this as much as we can for today, and I think it's been useful.
What was our original question? It was...
The original question was spirit guides versus inner self. So is looking to spirit guides giving your power away? Should you be doing that, or trusting your own inner guidance? Is it all the same thing? Okay, so we did kind of answer it, right? So in a nutshell, you want to be doing both. You start with the inner self, so that you have the right confident energy to ask the right questions of the spirit guides and accept that support. It can be disempowering, right? If you're looking for external validation or someone to tell you what to do. But it's important to not let it be disempowering, right? So stay empowered, stay in your powerful space, and watch those assumptions at the base of your questions. And you stay empowered by doing the contact and doing the work with your higher self.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we did answer the question.
Cool. Yay. But if anyone listening to this has any other questions, feel free to get in touch with us. So, Joanna?
You can email me at joanna@joannahennon.com, or message me on any of the social media.
Cool. And I'm at holly@hollywharton.com, or you can find me on my website and find links to social stuff there.
Awesome. So that was interesting. I hope that it helped, and that you guys who are listening, like, if you're not doing this stuff already, that you start with something, because it's really a useful practice to connect with your higher self and with your guides.
Give it a try. All right.
I hope you enjoyed this episode with Joanna Hennon and me.
And like I said, I really look forward to hearing what you thought of the two different conversations on the same topic. So I look forward to getting your feedback on that. Again, you can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or get in touch online. Also, I would love for you to join me on Patreon. If you head over to patreon.com/hollywharton, you can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month and you get exclusive access to content and done-for-you mindset work that I don't do or offer anywhere else, including a monthly Q&A where you can ask me just about anything. So, thank you for listening. If you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, but you like this and you want to hear more, please subscribe so you can get automatic updates in your podcast app. And that's all for now. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/292 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.